All right, there are the 3 tags that have been applied. I think for David Njoku of the Browns and Jesse Bates of the Bengals, it's official. For Orlando Brown Jr., it's still reported. I'm not sure of that, though. The deadline, though, I am sure is 4 p.m. Eastern Day. The Chiefs did announce it. Thank you, Pete. So all 3 of those are indeed official. Last year there were 10. So far, 3. Look, we're going to have Devonta Adams today. I'd be stunned if they do a long-term deal with
100%, right,
for the deadline. And Dante Adams needs to learn from his mistake from 4 years ago. 4 years ago, he was done with his rookie contract. The season was over, and he signed a long-term deal. Wait at that point.
Right.
You no longer have any risk at that point. Force them to use the franchise tag, because if they use it once, then when that contract ends, if they use it the next time, that's twice. Obviously, I'm very good at math. But after 2, they're never going to use it again. So if Devonta Adams had forced them to tag him 4 years ago, and they'd be tagging him now upon expiration of this contract, he'd be 1 year to unrestricted and unfettered free agency, because you're not going to get tagged that 3rd time. So that's really the one that is fascinating to me, not Adams, the other receiver, Chris Godwin, the Buccaneers.
Right.
They're looking at potentially tagging him, and usually that's bad news, but for Godwin, it's good news, because it means, number one, that torn ACL must be healing, or they wouldn't be thinking about $19 million plus on a 1-year tender, because it's a 20% raise over last year. Other teams must be interested, or they wouldn't be doing it. And this is tag number 2. Next year, he's free and clear. They're not going to tag him a 3rd time. So there's a silver lining in this for Chris Godwin.
Yeah, I think they look at it though like, wait, we're not exactly sure what's going on with Gronk. Antonio Brown's not there. Yeah, we got some young guys coming up the ranks, but we don't know exactly what they're going to be yet. Godwin, what was that injury in New Orleans Saints? Somewhere in like week 10-ish, right?
Week 15.
It was
week
that
15.
late. Okay.
He had surgery January 4th.
So that tells you even more, I think, the fact that they think things are going in the right direction. You're right. And again, ACLs this day and age, I mean, I think a lot of teams look at them and go, it's a 5 or 6 month injury. And you can get back on the field and be like practicing, maybe not 100%, but you're going in the right direction. And I think that's what they look at it. The Bucs, again, I know like we've all forgotten about them because Tom Brady's not there anymore. They are still one of the most talented teams in football, if not the most talented team. So they're not going to break this band up very easily. And yeah, they're going to, whoever's going to play quarterback, they want to make sure they're surrounded by some talent next year.
The OBJ ACL took 11 months from when he tore it to when he was cleared to play again. So we've been spoiled by the Adrian Peterson turnaround from a decade ago, but also, for the most part, guys are recovering from these torn ACLs. But the Buccaneers wouldn't be doing this now, 2 months removed from surgery, if they didn't think that everything was on track for him to play this year. It's $19 million in cash and cap space. And if I'm Chris Godwin, I'm not agreeing to a long-term deal. I'm not doing it, because next year I'm a free agent. I'll take the $19 million. I'll take the injury risk. I'll buy myself an insurance policy against a career-ending injury, and I'll be confident in the fact that next year I get to go wherever I want to go. It works better for a quarterback who's a pocket passer like Kirk Cousins, to continue to carry the injury risk and force your way to the market. But for Godwin, who wasn't a first-round pick, so he only needs his original 4 years plus 2 more, 6 years in, you get to market. And he's 1 year away from it if they tag him. So that very well may be what happens. All right, who else may get tagged? We talked about Devonta Adams. It's a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
Going to do it.
No way. Right.
How about the Cowboys? They're not going to tag defensive end Randy Gregory. They may tag tight end Dalton Schultz. That surprised me. Now I know they got cap issues, but if you're going to cut DeMarcus Lawrence, Gregory's shown that he can play. You're going to let him walk away? He's going to be in demand. This is a good time to be a free agent if you're a pass rusher. There's going to be teams out there that are going to pay Randy Gregory if he hits the open market.
Yeah, they are, but are they going to pay him like that kind of money? That's where I'd have a hard time thinking it's going to be that. I mean, he deserves to be paid to a degree. I mean, you're right. He is a physical force on the edge. He's talented. He moves well. He's had, a checkered history as far as things being on and off the field, dealing with the substance abuse program, all of that. So he hasn't necessarily been reliable. I don't think he's talented enough to where you throw the franchise tag at him. I don't. So I'm not shocked by that. But I would think, yes, the fact that they're talking about, DeMarcus Lawrence, maybe cut, restructure contract, that they're doing their damnedest to try to sign him something, affordable. And I would think that's the kind of thing, Mike, too, with Randy Gregory. There's a little bit of a hometown discount. I would. The Cowboys have been more than fair to him as far as being patient. They took a chance on him in the draft when there was questions about him already coming out of Nebraska. So I could see them wiggling something out there, behind the scenes. The Dalton Schultz one, that is interesting. He's a really good football player. He's kind of just arriving on the scene. Is he worth a franchise tag? I'm not sure I believe that yet either. So those are ones the Cowboys, I got to see it to believe it. I don't think they're going to do anything there.
Well, yeah, you're probably right. But, again, the position is so important. Where are you going to get your pass rush from? And at some point, you just got to bite the bullet. But maybe they learned from their mistake with DeMarcus Lawrence. They got good production out of him, but they paid him a long-term deal.
Yeah.
When he was tagged, and now they're ready to get out from under it. And that's part of what happens sometimes, too. And that's something to remember as we get closer to free agency. These 5-6-year deals with these big numbers, a lot of them are 2 or 3 year deals. Sometimes It's just a 1 year deal if it doesn't work out.
That's really all it is, right.
Other guys who very likely will be tagged, Mike Williams, the Chargers receiver. I think there's been some reporting that could happen. The Dolphins potentially could tag tight end Mike Gesicki. The Saints have left tackle Teron Armstead.
Really? You think that?
Market.
I wonder if that'll happen with Teron Armstead. Been injured. Getting a little up there in years. The Saints with all
they got cap issues.
Exactly. That's one where, and I would think he's gonna command top of the market kind of dollars. So where I just don't know if they can afford that. That'll be an interesting one there. 31 in July. Pete tells me in my ear. But the names you listed so far: Devonta Adams, Mike Williams. I mean, again, for receivers, the current status of the NFL, you got Justin Herbert. I probably wouldn't let him out the door if I'm the Chargers either. I'm franchising and trying to work on a long-term deal. Mike Gesicki is a guy that's going to command top dollar out there in the tight end market. And he is Tua's second best friend in the world other than Jalen Waddle. I could see that happening down there in Miami too, and they have a ton of cap room. Gesicki's a difference maker in the pass game, so I could see that going on, Mike. Sorry. I know we got more names on the list here.
Chandler Jones, there was a report over the weekend that the Cardinals aren't expected to tag him. Now, because of his cap number from last year, 20% raise, if your cap number plus a 20% raise is greater than the base franchise tag, you get that higher number. $24.192 million would be his 1 year salary and 1 year cap number. That's a lot.
29, you
reportedly, said? 24.19.
24.19. Gotcha.
They're reportedly not going to tag him and let him hit the open market. Your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, well, I think, a really good football player who certainly has value, but it's 32 years old, right? And yes, there's been, had the injuries this year. They got some young talent coming up the pipeline that they're going to have to pay here soon. I would think that'd be one. No, you don't franchise tag Chandler Jones. You hope to work out some sort of long-term deal, or maybe you got to let him walk.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And he had 5 sacks, remember, in week 1 of last year. He had 5.5 the rest of the year. And I know that sacks aren't a clear indicator of how disruptive a defensive end is being. There's a lot of outcomes where you're close to the action. Missed a number of games, almost get a sack, but he missed a few games. Yeah. Hey, they got bigger fish to fry right now with Kyler Murray. J.C. Jackson, the Patriots reportedly aren't going to tag him. We talked about that yesterday. Yeah. That one still surprisses me.
Me too.
Because when they released Stephon Gilmore, did they release him or trade him? They traded him,
right? Remember they put him on. They did
the. We're going to release him.
Right. I don't know what they did.
We're going to release him. They do the whole, hey, we're going to release him at 8 a.m. and by 4 p.m. they have a trade in place. That's what they did. I thought that they were going to keep J.C. Jackson, but he's going to get guys who are talented and become available, get paid. There's always a team out there that sees it as a good business move to go out and spend that money. They got to spend it anyway. Let's go get a star player. I always say the caveat is if the team that knows this guy better than anyone else doesn't want to keep him, that should be in and of itself a red flag. That if they're not doing everything they can to keep J.C. Jackson, that should concern you. But that nuance is often lost on teams that just want to go out and have that, we got J.C. Jackson in free agency.
Yeah, right.
Now we're going to be good.
Right. Yeah, and even we know Bill. Bill drives a hard bargain up there in New England. He's got a number in his head, what he thinks you're worth, and if you exceed that by 7 cents, he's not going to pay you. That's just the way it is. So they're gambling there. I'm a little surprised by that one too. I mean, we know how important that position is to that defense. Nobody puts their corners in more pressure situations or asks them to do more creative things than the New England Patriots. But, yeah, maybe they realize or just feel like J.C. Jackson's going to demand too much. And I think you kind of said it either in one of the articles last week or maybe even said it yesterday. Maybe they're just going to let him see the market first and let him gauge it and then try to jump in the party there. But, yeah, I was a little surprised too. I thought they would franchise tag him and try to work something out. J.C. Jackson, I think, is a really, really good football player, and I think he's going to get paid top dollar.
This is where the 2-day window for negotiating before free agency actually begins has value for the current team, because the current team gets an idea of what really is out there. One thing I have learned since they started doing the 2-day window, and it opens at noon Eastern on Monday, the 13th of March, it has been beneficial in that teams don't tamper as completely as they used to. At the Combine, it's more about lining up who's going to be in play. The numbers are held until we get to the 48-hour window. That's when the numbers start to get put on the table. That's when the current team can say, okay, now I know what the market is going to bear for my guy. I can swoop in and get this deal done. But you got to move quickly. That's one of the things that drives agents crazy during that 48-hour window. The minute it starts, the teams have their list. They got their top priority at defensive end. Then they got number 2. Then they got number 3. Then they got number 4. So they go to number 1 and they make the call and they say, here's our offer. We need to know ASAP if you're going to take it, because if not, we're moving on to number 2. So it gets crazy. But it very well could be that J.C. Jackson gets an offer next Monday that lands in a spot where he knows the Patriots will pay him.
Exactly.
And he'll just stay in New England. Potentially.
Right.
I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but it could happen.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. You're right. It does seem like there's a little more wiggle room there with the current way that everything's set up. Hey, other thing, I just want to, we have Jesse Bates in Cincinnati, right? I mean, was that official? Did they make that official yet?
Yes.
They did.
Yes.
That's a no-brainer, right? I think we both agree there. Even though he didn't even play his best football this year, and he even said that himself, he was worried about the contract. He's still one of the best safeties in the game. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And we saw he's a difference maker, whether it's the first play against the Tennessee Titans or an interception in the Super Bowl down in the end zone. How about David Njoku? I think that's the one that surprised a lot of people out there in the football world.
Absolutely.
At least fans, right?
Because what do you do with Austin Hooper? You're going to have 2 high-end tight ends on that team?
It is interesting. But Njoku, in my opinion, has greater potential than Austin Hooper. And I think that's why they're probably doing this. They're going, wait, we don't really have that many great receivers here in Cleveland. And Njoku, I think they probably look at it and go, wait, we've kind of screwed it up and not given him the ball enough. And he's got difference-making talent. That's the one thing I can say about Njoku. The stats, they don't pop off the screen at you. But he's a real good run blocker. And he is like a freak athlete in the pass game. And they need to get him the ball more. And I think ultimately he's one of the few guys on that offense outside the running backs that can do some things physically by himself. He can catch a ball 10 yards over the middle and run for an 80-yard touchdown. And I believe he did that against the Chargers earlier this year. He's that type of talent. And I don't think you let that kind of guy, out the door right now with the current status of their team. And tight end's important in Cleveland because we know they want to run the ball and do play actions and boots and all of that.
In his second season, he had a career-high 639 yards on 56 catches with 4 touchdowns. Last year, appearing in 16 games with 11 starts, 475 receiving yards, 36 catches, and 4 touchdowns. These are not high-end tight end numbers.
Nope.
But the other thing to keep in mind, too, sometimes there's a disconnect between the franchise tag and the current top of the market. Because what they did, I think 10 years ago, they changed the formula for the franchise tag. It's no longer the average of the 5 highest paid players at your position from the prior year. It's a 5-year average of the percentage that the 5 highest paid players at the position consumed under the cap. So it's tied to the cap. It's a percentage of the cap. And this year the cap went up. The cap went up $25 million, so it did give those salary cap numbers a little lift. But it's not as simple as saying, let's look at the 5 highest paid tight ends, and that's what you're going to get. And sometimes, like, for example, at receiver, $19 million for Chris Godwin on a second tag with a 20% bump over what he made last year. That's
not
still
horrible.
well below the high end of the market.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. Right. We were talking yesterday, Devonta Adams. I mean, we're talking $24, $25 million a year probably when we talk about those numbers. So you're right. That 10.9 for a guy that's got kind of superstar potential at tight end, I think that's a no-brainer, and I think that's probably the way they look at it, to go away. Yeah, it's not like you're breaking the bank and having to pay the guy $16, $18 million a year. 10.9 with the current status of the salary cap, like you're saying, is a drop in the bucket for a guy that's got Pro Bowl potential, game-breaking potential, and I'm sure that's kind of how Cleveland looks at it with Njoku.
The other thing to remember, too, is players who are franchise tagged can be traded. That happens from time to time. Tag and trade, you get value. It gets a little dicey because there's language in the CBA that suggests you can't do it just to trade him. You have to tag him with a good faith desire to employ him under the terms of that tag for the coming year. But it happens. Guys get tagged and guys get traded. We were talking yesterday about the possibility Devonta Adams gets tagged and gets included in the Aaron Rodgers trade package to Denver if that's what happens. And that would be awesome. If it happens, that would be great, and that's a possibility. It's entirely possible. It can't happen, obviously, until next Wednesday when the new league year begins, but Aaron Rodgers can't be traded until then anyway, so he could be part of that package.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.